Welcome to another exciting episode of the Epic Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Brad Sugars, the Chairman and CEO of Actioncoach, and today we're diving into the minds of some incredible business leaders, uncovering their real stories, strategies, and the secrets behind their victories. It's not just about success, it's about the journey, the hurdles, and turning challenges into opportunities. So let's jump right into it.
Welcome to Epic Entrepreneur. I'm joined today by James. James is the Managing Director for MTM Consulting. MTM Consulting are experts in education market research, school marketing, and strategy for schools. For 40 years, MTM Consulting has helped education providers to thrive, whatever the economic climate. James is always on the lookout for the latest innovations and techniques to benefit his clients, and he's here to share his story with us today. So, James, let's start with the top 3 things that you feel have made you successful in business. How might somebody follow in your footsteps?
One of the first things I did was to assess my strengths and weaknesses. What am I good at? Where are my expertise? But actually, what am I not good at? And therefore, what's not a good use of my time? How do I manage my weaknesses? That was certainly one of the first things I did. The other thing that has really changed my outlook is actually having time off. We talk about business owners on the golf course all the time, and we mock them for how long they spend on the golf course. But I was stuck. The world was imploding, and my neighbour in the office next door knocked on the door and asked if I'd like a round of golf. Well, I couldn't possibly consider a round of golf. Not that day, not with everything that was going wrong. About an hour later, I decided, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So I knocked on the door and said, you know what, I'm up for this round of golf. Halfway around, when about the 4th or 5th hole, I thought, that's where I've been going wrong with this project I couldn't complete. This is how I need to change element A and element B. And actually, just taking some time away from the coalface was life-changing for me. That's only 2 things. The third thing was make a decision. It might be the wrong decision, but if you make the wrong decision, you can fix it. If you don't make any decision at all, then nothing happens. Or the wrong thing happens, or everybody else makes their own decision on their behalf, and you then have to try and find out who's done, said what, and resolve it from there. So it's just easier to make a decision of some sort.
Those are great answers. So to recap, being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and it sounds like playing into your strengths, having that time away, giving yourself a step back so you can see the bigger picture and get a new perspective, and then that ability to make a decision and keep moving and not get bogged down. Yeah, fabulous. When you got into this business back at the very beginning, how did you end up here? Why this particular business?
I've asked myself that a number of times. How did I end up here?
Haven't we all?
My background is as a drummer, musician, a professional for 5 years. And my parents had enough of me living at home and applied for a job for me, which was this job. I left it, came back to it, and the owner of the business one day stormed in around 11:30 on a Tuesday morning and said she was done, she'd had enough, we were all redundant, she was closing the business. And then left the room. So we looked at each other and thought, pub? So we all went down the pub, had a couple of beers and said, well, we don't need her anyway. We can do that. In the classic, I was a data analyst at that stage, but as a data analyst, of course I can run a business of data analysts. We all felt we didn't need a boss. We could do this thing ourselves. Classic E-Myth style.
Why work for an idiot when you can be the idiot?
Exactly that. So that weekend, I made a phone call and said, look, there's no need to be hasty. Let's see if we can reach an agreement, which we duly did. So I took over in 2015, but it was really in 2017 that I restructured things. And that was when we started the business as it is now, really. I ticked along for a couple of years until I decided I needed some help. It was actually quite boring doing the same thing time and time again, as well as early starts, late nights, every day. I've reached the end of that. So I employed some help, and then lockdowns happened, and I undertook an assessment of where we were, what we do well, what we don't do well, the strengths and weaknesses thing, right? And realized that sales was really the next element to improve. We'd covered production off. Now, how do we sell more of our products? I employed a salesman who, on the first day, he said, "So, what's the plan?" Plan? Oh, yeah. He said, "You must have a plan." And I said, "Well, I'd like a helicopter in 5 years." Okay. So if I want a helicopter, where does my personal income need to be in order for me to hop in a helicopter and pop around a friend's house if I so wish? So where does the company's turnover need to be in order to pay me that amount of money? What does that mean in terms of staffing, in terms of output, in terms of market size, product price? And that was really the turning point in how we got to where we are today. Was a quip that I'd like a helicopter. It's a joke that slightly got out of hand, but then I don't think we'd be where we are now if we wouldn't have had it.
So you needed somebody to prompt you, to ask you what was the plan. It sounds like that question, simple as it is, it took your thinking down a different path.
And so when I took over, I had a young child, another one on the way, a mortgage, and the early days were when it was first announced that I was potentially redundant. Wow, okay, well, how do I pay the bills? How do I look after the children? So certainly the first 4 or 5 years were just about underpinning everything we had. All the work we were doing was very manual. It all took a lot of time. We had not a lot, but we had relatively lower skilled staff. Now we've automated all the processes. So that 5 years, I automated everything. That meant we now have fewer staff, but with a different skill level. So I don't think we're really in a position to grow the way we have now at that stage. Although a lot of it is personal confidence, isn't it? The whole thing, the main thing I've learned in business is it's all a people game. The whole thing is about people. Because if you're marketing, then you're convincing people. If you're selling, it's all about personalities. When you have staff, it's all about managing people. And as a leader, you don't just tell them what to do. You have to encourage them, enthuse them in what they're doing. So I've often thought the whole thing is a people game. And luckily, people seem to like me, so they go along with my ideas.
One of my mentors told me that, business can be really complicated, but at its heart, it's two things. It's money and it's people. And if you know money and if you know people, then you're in a really good position. It sounds like you've come a really long way in a relatively short amount of time. You referenced kind of a 5-year growth curve there. What would you say has been your biggest challenge, and what have you done to overcome it or maybe minimize it?
I think this is a difficult question because as we've grown, we've always had new challenges. And as soon as you learn how to resolve one challenge, you've grown beyond that stage. So 5 years ago, we were a 200k enterprise. We turned over 200k. This year, we've turned over 1.4 million. The challenge we have now is that we didn't build a back office fast enough during that growth period. So we're now having to pause just a little bit and get all our systems and processes aligned. And the challenge now is that that back office costs money to implement. So managing cash flow, you talked about money and people. I think we've got the handle on the people thing at the moment, but the money thing is a lot harder.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people listening who will understand that challenge. There's a great quote. I can't remember who said it, but it's just, new levels bring new devils. And it's that idea of every time you grow, there's a new challenge and you overcome that and then you're ready to grow again. It sounds like you've experienced some of that grow plateau over the past few years.
One of the advantages we have is that I have grown up through the business. So I have done every single job in the business, which means that in my mind, there is always the opportunity to go backwards. So if we do need to pause here and retreat a couple of steps, we can do that. I'm young enough to start again. So if this all goes wrong, I'm only 40. So I can have another go. So I think I'm more open to risks than certainly the lady who previously owned the business was at a completely different life stage and thus wasn't prepared to invest in, certainly not in growth, but certainly more in things she didn't understand, such as technology and computing was a step forward for her. So whereas I think that a challenge is to stay ahead, particularly in our industry where I'm a data analyst, we're a data business, those tools and technology is changing all the time. How do we make sure we're ahead of it?
Like you said, if you're not taking those risks, then you risk falling behind. It's not do something or stay the same. It's do something or fall back, which is exactly what you said in the opening question.
Yeah, and my father's a farmer, and he's always said, if you're not moving forwards, you're moving backwards. So, and it's uncomfortable to be always changing. We all like a comfort zone, and one of the first things I did was to take myself out of my comfort zone. I employed a person to do my day job, and then I had to do all the things I didn't much care for, but actually are crucial. And I've learned just so much from those things.
Yeah, so you call yourself a risk taker. I'm curious, has that always come naturally to you? And is there anything else that you've had to learn or any kind of way you've personally had to grow to reach the level of success that you have today?
I've always said that I've got no idea what I'm doing, and I still feel that in many ways. I don't believe in luck because I think you make your own luck, but what I have found is the attitude of me having no idea what I'm doing means I listen to everybody and I learn something from everybody. And if anyone asks me how much I know about it, and I say I don't know anything, then they tell you everything they know because they're trying to help. Whereas if you say, I know most things, or I know about this, then they'll then tell you the one thing that they think you should know, which is great. It's very kind of them. But if you say, I've no idea what I'm doing here, then they'll tell you everything they think you need. And you can just learn from everybody else's ideas. I'm not saying all ideas are brilliant. What I am saying is you have to synthesize all the ideas that are offered. And in fact, they often come up at a later date. I was having a chat with John and he recommended doing this. And that's actually why I've always had a coach and I've always had a mentor. One of the very first things I did when I was here on my own was to find a coach.
It sounds like you're focused on expanding the surface area of good ideas.
Look around this room. I know there's a white wall behind me, but I have a whole room of A1 size post-it notes. So all the walls here are post-it notes with my ideas. Lots of people use whiteboards, but I find I rub things off a whiteboard. Or if I have a photo on my phone, I never find it again. If I note on my computer, whereas if we have post-it notes all stacked up on topics, and we'll come back to them one day.
It's a visual kind of manifestation of that beginner's mindset or that curious mindset. What else is out there?
It does represent the chaos in my head as well sometimes.
So let's look at business coaching for a minute. You mentioned one of the first things you did was find a great coach. Why was that important to you, and what has it done for you and for the business?
A large number of my clients are headmasters or head teachers of independent schools. I've often thought they've been an exceptional teacher who's worked their way up to being head of departments, to being a deputy head, essentially still teaching and learning. They then become a head teacher where their focus is on managing the business. in many cases, multi-million pound enterprises internationally. And that's not their expertise. That's not their background. I'm exactly the same. Started off as a junior analyst and have evolved into the managing director of what is now a million pound enterprise. So I've always learning, asking for help, finding sources of knowledge, of wisdom. I find a coach really helps as a sounding board. I've got this idea. What do you think? Where have you seen the pitfalls, but how have you seen that idea to be successful? A coach is working with hundreds of other individuals in the same, or who have been through the same sorts of challenges have been through, so they can just add some logic in many cases, as well as having ideas I would never have thought of, how to resolve issues. I think in many cases they're a counsellor. When you're having a bad day and you want to give it all up, then in my case, my action coach is Martin. He's a Scotsman, so he's very straight with me, no nonsense. And I need that. I need someone to say, hang on. But that also helps at home, because it means my wife hasn't got to put up with all the, I've had a terrible day, how do I deal with this? Because actually you've got someone else to discuss things with, and thus home life is much happier than it would otherwise be.
Thank you for sharing that. That's something I've heard from other business owners as well, is the impact of a bad day can have that ripple effect and make it into the family life as well. So
and
lovely
that's
to hear that your coach is helping save things on the home front as well.
And that's another reason I have an office that I go to, because the 15-minute walk home is a good kind of de-stress, clear out. We actually have a hot tub as well, and then every evening we have half an hour in the hot tub talking about, this is the wife and I, not the coach and I.
Not Martin, not in there with you.
We have half an hour in the hot tub talking about how our days have been, what the children are up to, how importantly how her day's been and what she's been doing for the day, to make sure we continue to communicate. Because I think I'm not just managing a business here, I'm managing my own life, I'm managing a household. It's all so many layers, and you need to, if you can get them mostly right, I think you're most of the way there, but they all have to align.
I've heard this described as riding a bike, that you don't achieve balance on a bike by trying to pedal one pedal all the time, or by trying to hold both pedals at exactly the same height. You're not going anywhere. But if you go all in on one side and then all in on the other side, you find everything moving forward. That's that home life and work life balance. It's a great visual. I've used that a lot in my own life, but it sounds like the hot tub is pushing on one pedal, and then you get to work and you're ready to push on the other pedal.
Exactly that. And that's then the time away piece as well, because you have to clear your mind from work. Otherwise you catch yourself in loops. And that's okay if it's a positive loop, although my wife would say I'm sometimes a bit frantic, all these ideas, I just want to get them out. But if it's a negative loop, that can be really detrimental for everybody. So having the time away, having the clear headspace. I actually, I've made sure I have hobbies as well. You caught me earlier playing some guitar, but I also, I have a rally car. I do motorsport, so to make sure I have other lives outside of work.
I'd love to hear more about that. Maybe when we're done recording. Let's do one final question, which is just this. What is the top piece of advice that you got, or that you would love to give to another entrepreneur? We've covered a lot already, but is there something else that comes to mind as great advice?
There's a few quotes on the walls around me. One of them is the juice worth the squeeze? That's one of my favorites. But my grandfather, he used to say, worrying is like a rocking horse. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
I love that.
So the advice being, if you're concerned about something, do something about it, If you can't do anything about it, then there's no point worrying about it.
Time to get off the horse.
Yeah. And that way you have a clear mind when you sleep, and you achieve things that if you're scared of doing things, well, then you just have to get on and do them, or accept they're not going to be done. There's no point in worrying about them. So that's the major thing. That's the advice I would give.
Yeah, I can see how you've put that into practice through the things that you have discussed with us today. James, please go ahead.
So I'm a farmer's son, and there's a lot to be said for being a farmer's son, I think. That level of resilience, determination, whatever the weather, however you are feeling, that the pigs have to be fed, the cattle have to be fed. And I think that's how we've driven this thing forwards. However I'm feeling, we still come to work and we still get everything done. So I think that's certainly a great start in life.
I won't ask who are the pigs and who are the horses.
Winston Churchill said, I think it's Winston Churchill who said, dogs look up to you, cats look down on you, pigs just treat you as equals.
All right. You know what? I've experienced the dogs and cats. Maybe I need to spend more time with the pigs. James, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your hard-earned wisdom with us. We wish you the best of success going forward, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Will do. Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for today's epic conversation here on Epic Entrepreneurs. Huge thanks to our amazing guest for pouring their heart into sharing their journey. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, leave a review, share it, or hit that bell. But until next time, let's make sure you keep dreaming, take massive action, and stay epic.